Yeah.
We are live. Welcome to the Bradbury Challenge, the podcast where three writers attempt to write one short story each week for 2016. My name is Maya, and I am here with Gerald Hornsby and Chrissy Moss. How are you guys doing today?
Better.
Yeah. I'm doing fine.
That's great. Now, I can hear that you've still got a little bit of cough, so it's good to hear that you're doing better.
Yeah.
Last week was a little bit rough for you. How's everybody's writing? Did everybody write a story this week?
Yes.
Woohoo!
I finished one.
That's great. Me too. How about Gerald?
Yeah, I wrote two.
Of course you finished. You always finish your stories. You're just like, I knocked out 2 stories this week. Yeah, I wrote 5 stories this week. You're our overachiever. You're going to come out of this year with, what, 500 stories?
Yeah, I'm rubbish.
That's not a bad problem to have.
Yeah.
Totally not a bad problem at all. This week was the first week I wrote my short story from the writing prompt.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Yes. And it was actually a lot more fun than I expected. I don't think I've written from a writing prompt since about 98, 99, maybe. We used to have writing prompts in school when I was taking a poetry class in college, but I have never really been into writing prompts. And it was a really interesting exercise. I think I might try that again next week because I came into this week wanting to write, but feeling really blocked, not really having any ideas. And I thought, let me give this a try. And it really helped out.
I think so. Yeah, I think it can do that. It can. If you're lacking in inspiration, I think just having a single prompt can just make you think.
My God!
What?
Oh no!
My recorder.
My
recorder's not on. No, it is not recording. We'll start over. It's okay.
Yay! Technical difficulties.
Okay, so
are you okay, Gerald?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yep.
Just watching
Did you
the
just
clock.
totally roll your eyes at me? I am so sorry.
Are we just making this a short episode so Gerald can get out?
We may have to. Let's do 10 seconds of silence.
Hang on,
Is yours on too?
It was, and I stopped it. So right now I'm on.
Okay, 10 seconds of silence. Okay, let's sync. I'm 1, Gerald's 2, Chrissy's 3. 1,
2,
3.
Welcome to the Bradbury Challenge, the podcast where 3 writers attempt to write one short story each week for 2016. My name is Maya Good. I'm here with Gerald Hornsby and Chrissy Moss. How you guys doing this week?
Pretty good.
Okay, crazy week, but I'm all right.
And Chrissy's feeling a lot better. Still a little coffee, but you sound like a human being. And how did everybody's writing go this week?
Yay, I've actually finished one this week.
That's got to feel good. You've had a little bit of a dry spell there. What did you write about?
The one I finished was the one I started reading last week where it's the brother and sister driving home to their house in Sacramento, and a big catastrophe happens and they have to adjust.
That's great. And Gerald?
Yeah, I wrote another one of my archetype stories, which took a bit of a strange twist, and I wrote a piece of flash fiction too. So that was.
Did you know the twist was coming, or did it come as a surprise to you too?
It came as a surprise. I had an idea for the character in my head, and I just started writing it, and I just thought, "Oh, I know," and. Yeah, it took a dark twist. So
imagine that, one of your stories taking a dark twist.
Yeah.
It's always the nice ones.
That's right.
I'm loving my story this week, and I actually wrote from the writer's prompt. I came into this week without any real ideas. I came into this week frustrated because I wanted to write, but I've been working so hard on getting my job and working and learning to be a freelancer that I was really struggling. And so I took the writing prompt from last week, the one with the light that you see in the distance, and it took off. And I feel really happy with where it went. It's not a great story. The language isn't perfect. Yes, I did. And I like it.
Wow.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you're supposed to be finishing a rough draft. It's not supposed to be perfect. You can edit it afterwards.
Exactly. For me, this is all about getting words on the page because I'm in such editing mode that it would be very easy for me to just not write.
Right.
Especially learning to be a freelancer. You know, I could literally go weeks without writing if it weren't for this challenge. So just having rough draft on a page is good stuff for me. So did anybody have any challenges this week?
I think mostly it was me coming to terms with that yes, I do make excuses not to write. And this is a very difficult thing for me to, because it's not like I'm saying, well, I don't want to write. I want to do this. It's me saying, oh, I'll get to the writing eventually. And it's still an excuse.
But you're owning up to it. And I think that's huge. I know that listeners that have been listening to the show all along are probably cheering right now because we hear it. I haven't said anything, but we've been hearing it. And this is a huge step for you to say, I make excuses, because the first step to fixing a problem is recognizing you have one.
Well, and I think the whole getting sick thing was like a big kick in the butt because yes, I was sick, and that was I was physically incapable of thinking, let alone writing. So yes, that wasn't an excuse. That was a physical ailment. And it's like, okay, so all those other things, those are excuses.
Yeah.
That is so awesome. The whole point of the Bradbury challenge is coming to fruition. You know, for me, it was very much, I feel like I overcame something this week too, because in the past I put off, and I do it largely because I'm constructing this quote unquote perfect story. And this week I just took a writing prompt and wrote. And yeah, eventually I could make it into a story with all the plot and the character, but it was a good exercise for me to just close my eyes and write. And it was fast. And it wasn't one of these things where I had to make time for an hour each day to craft this perfectly crafted story. It is okay to just sit down and write and have something on the page and just have fun with it. And I went into this, because it was a writing prompt, I went into it with no expectations. And I think that was very freeing for me. And I haven't felt that probably for a couple years. Every time I sit down to write, I have expectations, I have goals in my writing. And I think this is the first time in a couple years where I just put words on the page and just wanted to see what was going to happen.
Sometimes it's fun just flying by the seat of your pants.
And I haven't done that in a very long time. Very, very, very long time. Probably 3 years.
Wow.
Unfortunately, I do that too much. And so I end up with all of these splintered story ideas. And so I have been trying to learn to do sit down and write on a specific thing to finish it. Because for me, the Bradbury challenge is more about learning to finish things. To stick with something, because I'm really good at writing. I do all sorts of writing. I don't finish things very often.
Yeah. I know that for me, it's coming, like I said, I haven't just sat down and written for 3 years. I have goals for everything I put on the page. And I know that comes out of fear, because before I finished my first novel, Rough Draft, I would write and I would never finish things. And the first rough draft novel I completed, I went into it with a goal. I went into it with a light sketch. And there's still a sense of not quite trusting myself to be a finisher. Like deciding that I am somebody that finishes stuff is a change in my self-concept. I've heard from the time I was a kid, oh, you don't finish things. If only you would stick to it. If only,
Right.
you hear those things in school and teachers and parents. And so somewhere in my subconscious that is still there. And for me to allow myself to just write without a goal, without a plan, without an outline, it takes a leap of trust, because in the past when I've done that, I haven't finished anything.
Right.
Yeah, I last year I went to this writing day, and we had master classes with proper writers. It was a crime writing festival, and the first masterclass was all about starting to write crime fiction, and how do you do it, where do you get inspiration, all that sort of stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
and she said, here's a piece of paper. Write down on this piece of paper the biggest problem you have with your writing. So people wrote down collect them in. 10 out of the 12 of us said we had problems finishing.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what that is.
Common. It's a very common thing. I think it's because I think it's a problem with planning, because you start off full of enthusiasm, understanding the story, knowing what you want to do, and then you get to sort of 2/3, 3/4 of the way through, and you sort of go a little bit off track, and you realize what you've written isn't what you originally planned, and doesn't fit in with the characters, so the characters aren't true to the story.
I think it depends on the story and who's doing it, but because I've been watching a lot of like tutorials and stuff with Greg, because he's been doing the leatherworking, and one of the ones that hit home with me was Adam Savage, the guy from Mythbusters. He has this talk on making things, and he says in the talk that he always gets like 75% into a story or into a project and decides he hates it. He doesn't want to work on it, and he doesn't want to do it, and he wants to go do something else, because he gets to that point where he's like, I've been working on this for too long, or just frustrated with it or anything and stuff, and he just wants to go do something else. And I think that it's not just writers. It carries over into other things, and I think it's like something in our human nature. Clearly, if like 12 people out of the 15 say, I just have trouble finishing things, and it's something we have to overcome. And
I think you're right. I think of a couple things when I think about this problem of finishing things when it comes to writing or any kind of craft. The first thing I think about is that thinking about writing, thinking about a story, planning a story is fun. Getting started is fun. After about 50% of the way, it becomes work, because you're getting to the point where you're crafting something rather than just having fun. Like it is work. And same thing with leatherworking, sewing something. I use corsets. It's fun to sit down and make a pattern and cut the fabric and start sewing. And then I ended up with all these half corsets around the house. So I think that there's some of that. It's an enthusiasm problem, an inability to sustain a certain level of enthusiasm. I think it is inherently human that we can't remain enthusiastic indefinitely, because it's exhausting. But I also think it's a self-esteem problem, because a lot of people, from the time they are small, they start things and they don't finish. And whether it is starting to play piano, starting to play t-ball, school projects, whatever it is. And if you've had a lifetime of learning that you are the type of person who doesn't finish things, it's very hard to turn that around and decide that you're the type of person who finishes things. Because in the back of your head, you're thinking, well, when am I going to stop? When am I going to finish again? I think that's probably some of the beauty of National Novel Writing Month, because it is so fast and it happens so quickly, and there are so many people around you that it solves the enthusiasm problem for you, because you're able to remain enthusiastic throughout the duration of 30 days. But it doesn't solve the finishing problem. And so you still end up with a ton of people that don't finish. And I think that that's where we see that these two things really do interact to create this problem for a lot of people.
Yeah, NaNoWriMo, I looked at the numbers one year, just a couple of years ago. I think it's something like 14% complete NaNoWriMo.
Mm-hmm.
It's very low, surprisingly low.
Yeah, and tons of people start. But what's interesting is, in my case, I did NaNoWriMo multiple times before I ever completed a NaNoWriMo. I must have had 5 to 7 starts. Some of those starts, they would range from 10,000 to 35,000 words before I would give up. And but what I noticed is every single time I did it, I would get further along. So for a while, I had my old tracker up, and you could see that, like, my first national novel writing month, I started off like 15,000, then I took a dip, and then every other one would get a little bit farther along, a little bit farther along. And I think that shows that you can train yourself to be a finisher over time. And it is the difference between a would-be author and an author. But even authors don't finish things. You see all these famous authors that die, and then there's all these half-found manuscripts in their basement.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
But they haven't finished them because they've died.
No, like old ones, you know? There's a reason why when an author can't figure out what they want to write, that they can, you know, pull an old manuscript from a drawer that's half finished, because there is an old manuscript in the drawer that's half finished. Now, I know that this podcast we need to definitely stay on time for the show. Last week we went totally over, but we're going to make sure that you're out of here on time, Gerald. We know, like, all of us, it seems like, had a really good week. We've all overcome some stuff. How do you feel about your stories as far as your language and your plot? Do you feel like your stories have changed at all over the last, 9 shows?
Yeah, I found the archetype stories that I'm writing, which are all on a common theme. Though I'm going to have to go back to the start of those, because the later ones are getting much better than the early ones. The early ones are quite bland and well, not as good as the later ones. And the flash fiction I wrote yesterday as part of a writing group, it was, I just loved it. I love what I've written, and it's not often you can say that, I don't think. We're very, very self-critical.
Yeah. For me, I would say that I'm not as far as you, but I can see myself going in that direction. I can feel that my language is starting to come back. You know, I mentioned a couple shows ago that I felt like, where are my words? And this week, I found some of my words, not all my words, but some of them. And that was a really, really good feeling. I can feel myself slightly starting to move away from editing mode, which is huge because I have just had editing brain. And because I'm still editing, being able to divide my brain that way, being able to do editing one day and then turn right around and write new words, that is a serious hurdle that I'm overcoming. And I can feel myself starting to, having the lower expectations is helping with that.
Yeah, I think, you know, writing without any expectation of what you're going to write, I think is very uplifting, and it's very freeing.
Definitely. So, do you guys have pieces that you're going to share?
I have a piece.
Okay, hit it, Gerald.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm just asking because, you know, I like asking.
Yeah. I always sound so surprised, don't I?
You're like Taylor Swift. Sorry.
Okay, and this is from the writing prompt that I'm going to do later as well. So anyway, here we go. And this is towards the end of the piece. She glanced at her watch. She had more time. Was it worth staying? Maybe another 10 minutes, perhaps 15. But she felt reluctance, a kind of invisible barrier between her and she couldn't even say her name. Not now, not yet. She took a deep breath and stood, the sun reappearing as if in confirmation. Maybe if she walked in that general direction, perhaps she'd feel strong enough to... What could she do? I missed that bit. Then she was there, standing, head lowered, as if in prayer. Prayer has done nothing to save her back then. A little child, born out of wedlock, coming to a world of pain. It's God's will, someone had said, and she'd screamed at them with rage. 3 days old, how is that God's will? Then, now here she was, after all this time. She felt more resolute somehow. She raised her head from the fresh flowers and the vase at the headstone's base, noting the carefully trimmed grass on each side. Then up the white marble, reflecting the sun, to the curved top. She read the name. Kathy. She jumped, her heart beating fast, finding it hard to breathe. His voice, still a deep baritone. I wondered if you'd ever come. She whirled. It was him. He'd changed. The hair, once a deep lustrous brown, was grey. His face showed more lines, none from laughing, but he was still Charles.
You know what? I can hear the change in your language. Have you edited that?
Just a light sort of, fiddle.
Because
Nothing.
I can hear the difference.
Yeah.
Just in the last 2 weeks that we've been reading the story out loud. It sounds very fluid. It sounds very natural. There are some really nice touches in there that I liked a great deal, Gerald.
Thank you.
I think it's interesting that we are actually able to hear it. Mine is the opening from the story that I wrote using the writing prompt from last week, which was a wonderful writing prompt. It was short, sweet, and it really made me start thinking. Sarah watched the light blinking, far away like a lighthouse calling boats away from ancient wreckage. Or perhaps it was the light of a train going farther into the distance. But no, it did not brighten or dull with time, just the constant blink, blink, quiver. The darkness around was not darkness in the absence of color, but rather a knowledge written upon her skin, behind her eyes, between the flashes of light. The light was audible, and the beeping that accompanied was punctuated by a whirring noise, was an itchy noise, like being in a room with red-painted walls. She willed her head to turn, but no movement came. Perhaps her head was already turned. Where am I, she thought.
Wow.
So, yeah, I enjoyed the writing prompt, and I think I'm going to make that a regular part of my week, actually. Just the freedom, just take a few minutes, pick a writing prompt, and just do it, just to feel the creativity and get some new ideas.
Yeah.
How about you, Chrissy? Do you have something you would like to share with us?
Sure. So this is from the one that I'm finishing this week. It's called The Deep. It's the one that I started from the underwater thing I did, writing prompt I did a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Karen carefully cleared away all the fronds, revealing a golden tube with etchings in the side. The etchings were circles and lines joined together in a string of small symbols, sometimes repeated. She couldn't shake the feeling that it was the rhythm of words, but she couldn't think of any language that had words like that. She carefully threaded her fingers around the pipe and gave it a tug. The near end came free of a small patch of grass, but the far end clung to the wall, its bulk attached to the kelp. Gently, Darren said. We don't want to damage it. I think I know what I'm doing, she said as she cleared a few more strands. Why don't you make yourself useful and look around? Maybe something else fell off the ship.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I'm so glad Dirk Moore suggested that we read part of our work, because I think it's going to be really interesting over the course of the year to hear the difference in our writing in a very very obvious way. Versus just having a bunch of files sitting in a drive somewhere, because I can already hear the difference.
Yeah.
So who's got the writing prompt this week?
I have one if no one else has.
Hit it, Gerald.
Okay. So what we did at this writing group yesterday, you'll need a partner or a friend or another person. And so the leader of the group said, I want you to come up with a character. What's their name? So we just said, well, I don't know, Charles, Dorothy. What gender are they, obviously? What age are they? Where do they live? Who lives with them? What newspapers do they read? or you could say which TV channel do they watch. What are they afraid of, and what's their dream? So you just create two characters like that, two very simple characters, those traits, and have them meet.
Yeah.
Where you have the meet is entirely up to you, but just have those two characters meeting in a certain situation. So we had people who one character came to pick up something that had been bought off eBay. Mine was meeting in a graveyard. It's all sorts of different situations. So it's just that sort of fresh, not overthinking it, just create these two characters.
Just come out of the air.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, I'm bummed that you have to rush off, Gerald, but
I'm
I
sorry,
totally understand. It's okay. And I want to thank all of our listeners for joining us. If you have any suggestions for Literary Roadhouse, let us know on the website, literaryroadhouse.com. And while you're there, you can check out all of our other podcasts, which include Literary Roadhouse, One Short Story Once a Week, and Literary Roadhouse Book Club, which I'm pretty excited about this week.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that one. So on that note, talk to you later. Ciao.
See you soon.
Let me